Good evening. My presentation tonight will start with a summary of the Skip the Straw campaign, and then we'll move to a discussion of possible next steps. The city launched its Skip the Straw campaign last November, which rolled out over several months. Volunteers visited 75 establishments that offer straws, and in many cases had meaningful discussions with owners or management. 58 establishments ultimately displayed some campaign literature, and 3 expressed support for the campaign but declined to display any material. So at a very basic level, there was a strong showing of support. 14 said they would switch to offering straws only upon request. 2 switched to paper straws right after learning about the campaign. 3 were already in the process of switching to paper straws, and 3 stopped offering straws altogether. 12 said they would speak with their suppliers about paper options, and 2 said they would deplete their plastic inventory and then try to switch to an alternative. Several shared information about their efforts to use eco-friendly packaging, and overall, the campaign was well received. 3, though, were unaware of the problems with plastic straws, and 2 declined to participate because they view the issue as political, which I believe they mean controversial, not necessarily party lines. One owner expressed that what is really needed is an overhaul in packaging, but he added that if many lead in eliminating plastic straws, he would follow. And my favorite exchange was with one owner who initially was reluctant, eventually agreed to display some material. Months later, when I was eating dinner at the restaurant, he specifically came out to tell me that they were switching from plastic straws to an alternative. And that, to me, is a perfect example of how engagement, education, and planting a seed could yield positive results. Then there was the instance when a customer confronted me angrily, and said, "Forget the straws, get rid of the plastic bags." The tagline from the campaign was "Reduce single-use plastics." So perhaps we want to take another step in this direction and turn our attention to plastic bags. We're living in a plastic age. Although we became good at recycling, the market for recyclables has significantly changed, and recycling no longer provides the revenue that it used to. Plastics strain our landfills, litter our towns, and pollute our environment, and we cannot recycle our way out of our plastic problem. In recent years, the movement to reduce and ban single-use plastics has gone global. In fact, single-use was named 2018 Word of the Year, hyphenated Word of the Year, by one dictionary. With respect to plastic pollution in general, plastics are fossil fuel-based, and manufacturing them depletes our natural resources. Microplastics have been found in deep ocean trenches, mountain peaks, frozen sea ice, air, soil, rivers, and in our food. One study asserts that people eat at least 50,000 plastic particles a year and breathe in a similar quantity, the health effects of which have yet to be determined. And experts estimate that 100 million tons of plastic can be found in the ocean, and that by 2050, plastic in the ocean will outweigh fish. With respect to plastic bags in particular, the average plastic bag picked up at a grocery store or takeout has a lifespan of 10 to 20 minutes. And as for the time it takes to decompose, estimates range from 10 years to hundreds of years, or it may never fully decompose once in the ocean. Globally, as many as 160,000 plastic bags are used every second, and in the US, only 1 to 5% are returned for recycling. These statistics all range, so I'm trying to give you, just an overall idea here. Lastly, plastic bags have been estimated to kill 100,000 marine animals per year. With respect to global action being taken, according to a UN count, as of July 2018, 127 countries have adopted some form of legislation to regulate plastic bags. The European Union banned certain single-use items by 2021, and Canada aims to ban single-use plastics by 2021 as well. And recently, over 180 countries pledged to meet control measures to curb plastic pollution, but the United States was not one of them. So in the United States, we have an absence of leadership on this issue at the federal level. And at the state level here in New Jersey, proposed legislation banning single-use plastics has stalled. So this issue arguably is winding its way down to you at the municipal level. 6 U.S. states have passed legislation banning single-use plastic bags. More than 200 U.S. municipalities have enacted ordinances that either tax or ban plastic bags. And here in New Jersey, 18 municipalities and 1 county have some form of restriction on plastic bags, with another 12 having passed ordinances that are waiting to go into effect. So beyond the beach communities, we've got Hoboken, Jersey City, Maplewood, Glen Rock, and Ridgewood. And restrictions are being looked at or developed in at least 11 other towns, including Milburn and Livingston. New Jersey legislators have indicated that more city ordinances will help influence a state-level ban, and a unified state-level ban would likely be welcomed by retailers who have multiple locations throughout the state. After this meeting, I'm going to circulate some information from Clean Ocean Action, and it's a chart and specific information about the 18 municipalities in the 1 county in New Jersey, so you'll see where they fall in terms of more specifics. And also Clean Ocean Action provided me the details of the 2018 beach sweeps, so you'll see specifically what shows up on New Jersey shores, and that's just with fall and spring beach sweeps. Now let me highlight arguments against plastic bag bans. Alternatives to thin plastic grocery bags, such as thicker plastic bags, paper bags, and cloth bags, all have their own negative environmental impacts. Plastic bag bans could negatively impact working families, seniors on fixed income, and disabled people. And reusable bags harbor dangerous bacteria because many are not often cleaned. There are ways to counter some of these concerns, including exemptions for people on public assistance and disabled people. Now, since there aren't corporations in Summit that produce plastic, Common Council cannot regulate plastic production or packaging. But Common Council can, as Maplewood did, pass a resolution urging federal and state legislators to hold corporations responsible for plastics placed within the environment. Common Council can also consider a plastic bag ban. I want to say a few things about the range of these bans, or restrictions is really a better way to think of them, as restrictions. They vary in scope and range from partial to full outright bans. Some ban plastic only, some ban plastic and paper. Some impose fees on paper only, some impose fees on plastic and paper. Some apply only to establishments with some minimum square footage, some have phase-in educational periods, and some have minimum gauge requirements, which ban thin plastic bags but allow for thicker plastic bags. Many have exceptions and exemptions, and there are arguments and studies in favor of and against each variation. According to Clean Ocean Action, the elements of an effective plastic bag ban are as follows. Ban all plastic film without permitting a thicker plastic bag. Include a mandatory fee on paper bags. Include a requirement that all paper carryout bags be 100% recyclable with at least 40% post-consumer recycled content, and require that the fee on paper carryout bags not apply to customers receiving government assistance. Clean Ocean Action believes a ban fee hybrid is the most effective, while another researcher believes that simply a fee on both plastic and paper bags best encourages reuse. Some reports assert that following complete plastic bag bans, there's a rise in the sale of small garbage bags because people need them for picking up animal waste and lining trash bins. And some studies show that following bag restrictions, there's a significant increase in the use of reusable bags and a significant decrease of plastic bags littering storm drain systems and the community in general. So let's look at some local indicators. First, where I started, businesses were receptive to the Skip the Straw campaign. Next, the city was collecting plastic film at the transfer station, partnering with the local supermarket as part of the Trex collection. After several months, the supermarket said they could no longer accept our plastic film because the volume was too great. We're working on alternatives, but recycling plastic bags is no easy task. The Bags to Benches program that's being run by Green Faith Circle to date has collected over 2,900 pounds of plastic film just over the course of 10 months. Also, which was presented here previously, the survey conducted by Green Summit showed that the #1 priority was a plastic bag restriction. And lastly, this year, plastic bags were banned at the farmers market, And according to Summit Downtown, customers are thrilled and the ban has not negatively impacted sales. Now, arguably, just want to keep going back and forth here, arguably, because I'm a Libra, no? It's the same group of people who already use reusable bags, who took the survey, who go to the farmer's market. So how do we know whether or not the broader community has an appetite for a ban? Next steps could include the following, all of which our committee could assist with. Surveying a broader cross-section of residents. You would want consumer buy-in. Meeting with business owners and getting their input. Retail leadership and commitment would be important. Speaking with council members and mayors from other towns that either have implemented a restriction or are considering a restriction. And we can do further research to identify elements that comprise the most effective ordinance, collect more data on the impact such ordinances have on communities. There are many toolkits, model restrictions, and actual ordinances available. Wading through this information can seem overwhelming, and this presentation barely scratches the surface. There is no shortage of information out there on this topic. But sometimes there's one point or one image that informs the direction you take. And for me personally, it's the scale of global plastic pollution that is that one point. And as for imagery, in one article I read, plastic pollution was likened to an oil spill. We've had shores and waterways flooded with oil, wildlife saturated in oil, and we mobilize and address the problem. Right now, we have shores and waterways flooded with plastic, wildlife suffocated by plastic. Why aren't we mobilizing and addressing the problem? The goals of a plastic bag ban include reducing litter, changing people's behavior, and ultimately using less single-use plastic, which is where we should be heading. Plastics do serve good purposes and are components in many items we use and need. And single-use plastics are essential in the medical field, for example. But we should end our throwaway habits, and restricting a common throwaway item at the checkout counter can help accomplish that. So I will close with a personal anecdote. Many years back, when I first watched An Inconvenient Truth, I made changes immediately. I bought a Prius, stopped using paper towels, and I bought reusable bags for all family members. My grandmother said, "Why are you being so extreme?" So I asked her how she used to carry her groceries home from the market. So she paused, laughed, and said, "I brought my own bags." So the Recycling Advisory Committee urges you to take a hard look at restricting single-use plastic bags in the form that is best for Summit and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm going to, well, let me just preface a couple of remarks, and then I'll say some more maybe later, depending on what I hear from other folks. But that goes without saying almost. I want people who are hearing this and saying, well, why are we talking about this now? And who haven't been following, this is not the first time we've had people come to the dais to the podium and speak about the need to do something about plastic pollution. We had, as Karen referred to, people from Green Summit come in and talk about the survey results and the fact that the people who filled out the survey, and maybe it's a self-selected group, yes, but that's the people who are interested in it, and maybe that's just the tip of the iceberg. There may be just a lot more people out there who just don't fill out surveys. But they came in and they said, look, the vast majority of people they want addressed is plastics. We had 8th graders come in and present about the fact that not only their one group of 8th graders, but other 8th graders at Lawton C. Johnson Middle School had done displays about the need for controlling plastic pollution. And then we had a group of 5th graders come in on their own, decide to speak about the need to deal with plastic pollution. If our kids need to come in to tell us what we need to do, then we have an obligation to listen to them, because they are the ones that are going to inherit this planet many more decades than we are. And so it is not the fact that we have now come to the Recycling Advisory Committee, but this is a long process that we've already undertaken. And I will tell people exactly clearly where I stand on this issue. I believe that we should move forward as a council and as a city with a ban on single-use plastic bags, on styrofoam, and plastic straws. The only question for me is how much time we should give folks who already have businesses that have them in their inventory to deal with it, whether it's a year, 18 months, something like that. But the time has come. We are not unique here, as Karen referred to the fact not only communities in the United States, but all over the world are trying to deal with it. And yes, we could wait for the state to enact something, but if we were to wait for that, then possibly many of us would not be on council any longer and long gone. So with that, I will open it up for folks, other members of council to speak. Anybody else? Beth.
Thank you, Council President. I agree with a lot of your comments. I'm going to steal one of your lines and say this is a very green issue. And it's not just green because it involves the environment, but it's green because it involves our city finances as well. And being on council and on the Finance Committee, one of the issues we're facing is that the recycling contract that we have in town is really, has become very financially it's not feasible for the company that's doing it to go on. We're going to have to renegotiate that contract. It's going to cost us significantly more, maybe several times more. And that's because China was the largest market for these recyclables, and because of lots of different factors that could go into that market is pretty much drawn up. So this is not only just an issue, it's an issue that hits us in our pocketbooks as well as in our environment, and it's something that we need to look at very seriously. I'm in favor of some kind of restriction as well. I would be very interested in pursuing some of the options that you talked about, reaching out to business owners and speaking to them about how best to implement this and what consideration they would need in order to implement this fairly and not to put too much of a burden on them, and also to talk to some of the other municipalities who've enacted these restrictions and bans and seeing what their experience is and what we can learn from those communities. But I think we are really quickly approaching a point where we're going to have to take some action, and doing it in a thoughtful and measured way is the way to go about it, but I think that we need to move forward.
Thank you very much, Beth. Anyone else? Matt.
Thank you, Council President. Director Cascades, you, in our committee, you spoke about what happens when the plastic bags get caught up at the recycling center. Can you tell us about that, please?
So, for you, Council President. Sure. It is one of the biggest issues right now that the recyclers that recycle and transport to other countries is the plastic bags getting caught up in their machines. Their downtime on the average today in that process about 4 hours a day. So they have to shut down the process about 4 hours just to remove the bags out of the machines themselves, which creates an economic inconvenience, of course, for these folks. And they are looking for communities now to join together to ban plastic bags from the collection stream.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
Something to add on that, when we toured Giordano's recently, they recently completed a renovation, and they
Karen,
have a
could
whole...
you just explain what Giordano's is?
Giordano's is where we send our recyclables, and where Basso, I think, ultimately sends those curbside recyclables. So they completed a renovation, and one feature that they added are these overhead ducts, suctioning up the plastic bags, so that after the waste goes through optical sorters, then you have manual sorters, and they're literally picking out all the bags, and just, there's a whole collection, a new collection mechanism that they've had to implement because there's so many bags mixed in, and that they're like #1 tanglers. They stop the equipment. Now, a lot of these facilities, I believe, don't have the capability to recycle plastic bags, so it's a huge problem. It's like top of their list, that you've got bags that are jamming our equipment, and they're renovating specifically to try to draw the bags out of the stream.
Okay. Anyone else? Sure. Greg. I'm sorry. Or Greg.
Sure. So I talk all the time in here about how I've been an EMT for 9 years, and I promise it relates. Part of the reason why I continue to recertify and go through all these hours of training and all this is that when I am out to dinner or something with family or friends and something should happen, there's a medical emergency, I would like to believe that I could be helpful, that I would know how to help in that situation. And the way that it relates is, this is not a municipal problem, this is not a state problem, it's not a countrywide problem, this is a sort of a global emergency, and we're not really seeing leadership. So we are the people. We've just heard there's a bunch of different ways that we can be helpful. And like you said, Karen, it's sort of fallen to us now. We look around and nobody else is doing anything, so we have to. So I'm in support of figuring out the best way to make it work for Summit, but I think we need to do it. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora, please.
I agree to a large extent with what you're saying. I just want us to be mindful of the cost to the businesses. We spend a lot of time, 20 minutes, about economic development in the town, and that's critical. But we also have to be mindful that we can't insert ourselves as a government and then put all the pressure on the business. So I'm in favor of moving forward, provided we get a real balance here so that the cost of banning plastic is not borne by businesses.
Okay,
That would be
I'm sorry.
wrong, in my opinion.
So let's take an example where there's a fee. Let's take there's a fee on plastic and paper. There's just a fee. Right now, they don't charge fees for any of the bags. So in what I've read, it's actually welcome because typically the retailers get to retain that fee. So there, in that scenario, there's no.
They're making money.
They're making money, and even they're already giving out plastic bags. So if we ban the bags, and there's a fee now on paper bags, let's say we do that hybrid, they're making money because they don't now charge for bags.
Well, and I just want to make sure that if we go in this direction, we are mindful that we have that in our plan.
Absolutely. And in some of the things that I've read, that in fact they welcome it, some welcome it because they're actually going to recoup some costs for the bags that they give out. Now we're started with Skip the Straw. We have developed some relationships. I mean, everybody's got them. The committee now has some people that we can sit down with that recognize us when we're going to dinner and come out and have meaningful discussions about this. And absolutely, we have to be mindful of that.
Right.
I mean, the flip side of this is, of course, that when, as you say, the stores right now are not charging, unless they're charging it through the overall pricing structure, they're not charging specifically for the plastic bag or the bag itself. If people bring in their own bags, right, it is not necessarily harming the store, because presumably if you are not specifically charging and getting a revenue stream for it, either you're keeping the same price level and therefore you're saving potentially a cost item that you otherwise are paying for, right? I mean, everybody that decided to skip the straw, I assume didn't say, okay, now I'm saving X amount of dollars on plastic straws that I was otherwise purchasing and giving to my customers for free. I'm going to now reduce the cost of my overall drink or food, right? They kept the same price, but yet they had a lower cost for their product, I mean, their cost for their services. So I'm not sure necessarily that it is a bad thing for stores per se. I mean, I agree with you, we should look at it carefully. I completely agree with the comments provided that, this has to be fit in with how we need to do an outreach, we need to figure that out. But there's also, in my opinion, we have to come to some decision and come to it soon. Because otherwise, it's like, okay, we could look at this issue endlessly. We could look at a whole bunch of different communities and what they're doing endlessly. There's just too many options, but sooner or later, we need to just come to a decision on our own.
But it has to be thoughtful, and it will have to take time, because we have to consider people's convenience, we have to consider all kinds of things, and not just getting this done because future generations are asking us to do it today.
No, I understand that, but at some point in time, you say, okay, we've thought about it.
Fair enough, but you need,
Steve, you had it.
Can I, I'm sorry.
Oh,
may I
so
just
go ahead,
add,
Karen.
Just to follow up on your point, when you bring your own bag, most of the time, they thank you, by the way. I mean, that's the experience I have, that they're happy that they're saving on a bag.
I have one comment, and it really, one of the studies I saw talked about the fact you have national chains are challenged because towns are varying, within the town. one of the appealing things about Summit, I think, is that we don't have a lot of national chains here. So, I mean, that is a step in that proper direction, is we have the CVS's, we have the Walgreens, but, you know, we don't have a lot of the grocery stores and the like. So I think that's a positive in us moving forward. The other thing I haven't heard you talking about, and I'm amazed at, because I look at my closet, is the dry cleaning bags. You know, and we're talking about food bags or grocery bags. What goes on with the dry cleaning bags that are everywhere?
Well, it's interesting because I recently asked a volunteer to look at that because I wanted to alert them to the Trex collections. And I think there's one place in town that allows you to either buy a reusable garment bag or bring your own. But those are bags that
Eco
can
cleaners.
be,
In Springfield.
Right, yeah.
They're
That-
really good.
that can be collected as part of some of these collection programs. And I think in some ordinances, some exempt them, some include, some cover them. But I know in town, we have one or two that are particularly good about it. And now they all know that there are plastic collections, so if there's any plastic at their facilities. But
Okay, Marjorie, please.
Thank you, Karen, for this presentation. And we've been talking about this issue for a long time, so it's really nice to see it come to this point. I think one of the things that you pointed out is that you have relationships with these businesses, and I think that's a great opportunity to continue, as you're following up with your Skip the Straw campaign, to continue following up with a conversation about plastic bags and reducing plastics in general. And, just getting their thoughts, their ideas, and I think that information will be very helpful going forward. So I would encourage you to move forward with gathering more information. And we have done some of that over the years, just at various times. But anyway, I think this is a great step forward. I'd like to see us move to make some changes on this front. The other thing that I'd like to ask you to do is just explain the Trex program quickly to people in the audience and people at home who might not know what it is.
okay, Trex is a company that makes plastic products. Plastic decking is one of them. And they have relationships with some of the supermarkets that the supermarkets collect the plastic film and plastic bags, and then, I don't know if they sell it, but they get it back to Trex, and Trex uses those plastic bags in making its products. So that's a perfect recycling loop. That's great, but it's hard to, you have to manage the collections, you have to have a supermarket that's willing to accept it, but it's a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, Karen, I just want to say this was a great presentation, and I love what you guys have done around that, the straw campaign. And I guess my thought is that that's a very good way, I think, to go about changing behavior. It's much more effective to talk to people, to ask them, do you understand things? But my personal view is they should have a choice. None of this stuff is free. Recycling is very, very expensive, as Beth and Paul alluded to. There's a big cost to it. And as the global demand for recyclable material has basically flipped, because you used to get paid for it when China wanted everything. Now it's very expensive to get rid of it. And you read studies where a lot of quote-unquote recycled material just ends up in landfills. At least towns think they're doing this, and their residents are busy feeling good because they sort everything, and it ends up in a landfill anyways, because nobody wants this stuff. So, I think we have to be very careful about separating out what's a feel-good thing, we're going to feel great because we're making a difference, versus what's some of the realities around some of this stuff. And I think education is the important way to go about it. I personally really am against when there's a diktat that you've got to ban something, tell people you can't do this, you can't do that. I just think it's a slippery slope, and where does it stop? You know, the Economic Advisory Committee talked about, look at New York City. New York City is an amazing place that's vibrant and everything. Their retail storefront situation is a disaster, and it's because of the policies that are implemented by the governments there. You have to be careful about doing different things. There's empty I'm alluding to, there's empty storefronts all over Manhattan. So, like I said, I would much prefer you know, the commission to go and educate people around it, educate store people, or whether they should give options. But there are costs involved. You know, we say, oh, you know, senior citizens, and you mentioned this, Karen, I thought it was good you mentioned it. You know, this mode of picking stuff up is cheap. They save money doing it this way. Maybe for the overall environment, there is a cost that's not being thought of around it, but when you change that and you ban something, those senior citizens are going to bear the cost of that. Businesses, David, you talked about, oh, how are they going to do it? Over time, competition is going to readjust for costs that are being imposed on these businesses. And like I said, I just think a much better way to do it is to educate people. Bring your own bag, that's great. I do my dry cleaning at a place that doesn't have recycled plastic. It works wonderfully. You know, they pick it up all the time, you give it back, and that kind of thing. They take the hangers back. You know, you don't have to give that away. But when we start talking about telling people how to live their lives, banning things, I think it's a problem. Now, ultimately, obviously, there is a way to vote on this stuff. The council wants to do it, and the citizens of Summit say, I hate you for doing it, they'll vote you out. That's something that council people and the mayor can decide on.
Exactly.
So ultimately, that's how people are going to make their expressions felt on it, because there will be elections on it if that becomes a hot topic. But, you know, like I said, my personal view is I'd much rather have people make choices, not be told what to do.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm going to open it up to the public. Anybody from the public that wants to speak? Yeah, absolutely. Comments, questions, whatever the public wants. Donna, come on up.
Hi, Donna Gagan-Patel, Patel, 115 Beekman Road. I'm the chair of the Environmental Commission in Summit, and I just wanted to say that the Environmental Commission supports Karen's presentation and wishes to see this move forward as well in whatever capacity we can. Anecdotally, I just want to add some facts that I have. She mentioned Milburn and Livingston as two nearby towns that are in the process of doing this. The environmental commissioners in Madison, both Chatham Borough and Chatham Township and Cranford, I know have also talked to me about the fact they're in the process of either in drafting or showing it to council. In terms of how they went about getting public input, the Chathams created a SurveyMonkey survey that they sent out before the ordinance was drafted, one for residents, one for businesses specifically, that they actually told Summit we could use the format if we wanted to. And then Milburn, once they had the draft ordinance, held public hearings during the day and at night to hit different groups of the population, particularly hoping to get the business people in the daytime and then more residential people who were working in the evening one. And they had, you know, obviously people brought up good issues or comments and also a lot of positive feedback in terms of what they were looking to do. The plastic bag conversation earlier made me think we could just say 2 tips for people at home with recycling. Number 1, please remember not to put your plastic bags in your curbside recycling. Like you heard, they gum up the machines, they don't belong there. And number 2, don't put your recycling in a plastic bag. So you really need to have some sort of open container that the cans, aluminum cans, bottles go into, not a plastic bag, because that creates a problem at the end. And I had one more thing that I don't remember.
That's okay, Donna. Both were very helpful tips, though.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Okay.
Sorry.
But if you think about it, just come on up after that.
Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to speak? Talia, come on up.
Hi, I'm Talia Gould, Gould, and I live on 24 Webster Avenue. I'm here to address...
Just speak up, Talia.
Okay.
Just lower the
And
mic
then,
a little.
yeah, there you go, perfect.
Okay, I'm here to address the problem of climate change and plastic pollution. Okay, climate change poses one of the greatest threats to the long-term health of the world's population, including little towns like Summit. It is a problem that has been ignored for decades by leaders, politicians, and the average person, even though we consequently have caused it. Even though a small town might have a minimal impact on the world, we must take the opportunity to help save the planet. This can be encouraged by many different actions, such as reducing the use of single-use plastic. Decreasing the amount of plastic bags used in supermarkets and pharmacies would create a large imprint on this crisis. The average person only uses a plastic bag for around 12 minutes, and in that time, most likely has no idea where it's going after they've thrown it away or left it in the road. And due to this, about 100 to 500 billion plastic bags are dumped into the ocean annually. Once in the ocean, they harm the environment severely, suffocating marine life, destroying habitats, and starving animals if consumed. Considering these terrifying results, bringing a reusable bag to collect groceries is more than easy. I fully support the plan to reduce and ban the use of plastic bags in Summit, and I hope you consider it deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
By the By the way, I think you have a very proud father up here, and rightfully so. By the way, I did not know that Talia was going to comment on that when I said about the kids. But I do think, having heard her and having heard other kids, I will reiterate. And I know that sometimes adults, we complicate stuff and we think about all the different things. But sometimes we know what is the right thing to do. And we can look and we can try to figure this out. I think Donna had some great ideas about how to use the Survey Monkey, doing all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, we need a direction. We need to know where we're going. And businesses should know where we're going. And they should have a clear guidance about it. Because I think part of what government does is not simply to stay out of the marketplace. Government's responsibility is to take care of the health and welfare of its residents. That's what government is there for. And so if we know of a problem that was going to impact future generations, we don't simply sit by and say, oh, okay, that's going to be complicated, or that's going to cost some group of people some money, or this is going to be difficult. It is our responsibility as government officials to do something about it. And so I would say we should spend the next couple of months maybe looking at this issue, trying to figure out the best way, and then hopefully before the end of this year have a clear path forward that can be presented to council and then presented to the public of how we're going to get things done. So with that, I will thank Karen for coming in with a very thoughtful presentation. Thank you to you and to all the folks who assisted, and Donna and so forth. And we will move on from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.